What's up guys, it's Alex, and today I've got a pretty cool video for you guys. So, the guys over at the Tellico Village Fishing Club have invited me back again this year to do another seminar, so that is what I'm on my way to do. I'm going to film the whole entire thing so you guys can watch it. I'll talk 30-45 minutes, maybe around an hour, about fall fishing. That's kind of the plan tonight. I actually did a video a few weeks back and it was my most consistent fall baits. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to do a breakdown, in-depth, just everything you could ever want to know about those baits. Maybe talk about a few other things about, you know, some more centralized things in Tennessee about how the weather affects us and all that kind of stuff. But generally it'll be information that most of you guys will be able to use all across the country. So hopefully you guys will enjoy today's episode.
Out.
Thank you. So how's everybody doing now? Alright, so like you said, my name is Alex Rudd Fishing. It's a YouTube channel. I'm owner, operator. I pretty much do everything on the channel, make videos and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of my claim to fame in the industry. So that's kind of how I got my start. That's how I work with all the companies that I work with, is just solely through social media. So by raise of hands, how many people were here last year? No. All right, cool. I like that. I'm more comfortable with that. No, I'm just kidding. How many people subscribe to my YouTube channel? Show of hands. All right, thank you. I really do appreciate everybody that subscribes to my YouTube channel. I just broke 15,000 subscribers a couple weeks ago and broke 10,000 followers on Instagram, and so those are a couple really big milestones that I really appreciate all the support from everybody. But tonight we're going to talk about fall fishing, a little bit of winter fishing, but mainly we're going to talk about consistency. A lot of the times I go back in my catalog of videos and I keep a lot of notes. I use an app that keeps notes for me on what I was using a certain time of year, you know, what the water conditions were and all that kind of thing. And when I look back at those notes a few weeks ago, I found that there was some definite consistencies on the baits that I actually chose to catch fish on. And so I brought all those baits with me tonight. I also brought some big swim baits because it happens to be one of those baits. So we're going to talk about some of the most consistent baits, including the big swim baits. And like I said, if you guys have got any questions, just raise your hand. I'm actually in school to be an elementary school teacher, so when the hands go up, I start pointing and seeing what everybody needs. But so we'll start with the first thing, and probably my favorite thing to throw. And for anybody that watches my channel, you'll know I love to throw a frog. And for me, over really the past 2 to 3 years, the frog has been probably the most consistent bait for me in the fall. So from the beginning of August all the way till around the end of October, even into the 1st of November, and I even caught a frogfish in December of last year just because it stayed so warm. The frog is just a super consistent bait. There's a couple reasons for that. Number one for me is that it's almost like finesse topwater fishing. Because this bait, you can walk it, you can chug it along, you can do all kinds of things with it. And it doesn't have any rattles, it's not very big, it's not intrusive. So a lot of the times when the fish aren't eating something big like, you know, like a super spook or a whopper plopper or something like that, super loud and makes a bunch of noise, but they're still looking up, a frog can be a super valuable tool for you guys. Another reason I like this bait so much is because you can put it places that you can't put traditional topwaters. If you try to skip a spook under a dock or under an overhanging limb, all you're going to do is end up cussing and jerking stuff and breaking stuff trying to get it out of there. With the frog, you can get it in those places and you can work it in those places, walk the dog with it in open water and get a lot of big bites. This year already, from about the beginning of August to right now, I've probably caught 30 fish over 3.5 to 4 pounds just on a frog. And it's just been a super consistent bait for me. Another reason it is super valuable is grass fishing. You guys know this time of year the grass starts to mat, starts to get that cheese on top. As it starts to cool down, it starts to die, that fungus starts to grow, and people call it the cheese. This is the most effective way to dissect that very quickly. And the fish are going to live in there. The fish are going to live in there for a couple reasons. Number one, the dissolved oxygen. There's a lot of oxygen in there because it is a plant, it produces oxygen. So what that does is it draws the bait in there. When it draws the bait in there, the bass follow. Wherever the bluegill, the crawdads, the minnows are at, that's where the bass are going to be. So if you can breathe easy, if they feel safe and they've got a lot to eat, that's where they're going to be. And now when I'm fishing grass with a frog, one of the key things that I listen for is a popping sound. How many of you guys heard the pop? It sounds like Rice Krispie treats on grass. Okay. If you ever get around a grass mat, if you're ever fishing grass, be listening for that. It sounds just like you poured a bowl of Rice Krispies and poured the milk on it. It starts to snap, crackle, and pop. It's exactly what it sounds like. What that is the bluegill are actually up under that mat, and they're popping and eating all the little, phytoplankton, the little bugs, the little minnows are up under there popping and eating that. And what that sound does is it just draws the bass in. It kind of hones them into a general area. You can go through, fish this frog, and all this frog looks like on top of that mat is a minnow, a dime bluegill, a gizzard shad that's got pushed up there, and you're going to be able to crack them. Now, a couple key things with the frog on rod and reel for me is I'm using a heavy action rod, heavy, extra fast action rod. A couple reasons for that. Number one, I want to have that power. So if I am fishing under a boat dock, or if I'm fishing under a limb, or if I'm fishing in a grass mat, when one eats it, if they run around a boat dock post, or they go down in a log jam, or they get all wrapped up in the grass, I want to have all that power to get them out of there. And that rod really is the key to that, is having that power. The reel, I'm using a 7:1 gear ratio. This is a Lew's BB1 Pro. This is a 7.3 G-Rod Pro Bass rod. But the Lew's BB1 Pro, I love it. Big spool. I can put a lot of 65-pound braid on there. And it's really fast. I can pick up line if one hits it, runs at me. I can pick up line and keep them coming towards me, keep that momentum to get them out of that cover. And then that 65-pound braid, it's going to cut grass, it's going to cut tree limbs, it's going to cut about anything that's in your way. And like I said, honestly, probably my favorite way to catch fish, period, my favorite way to catch fish this time of year is the frog. And it's definitely, the consistency of this bait almost amazes me. I think too many people pass up the frog and think that it's just not a very effective tool unless you're around grass, which is not true. Yes, sir.
Direct tie in?
Yeah, yeah, just directly to the front of the bait. I'm using a Spro, I'm using a Spro 65. That's really all that I use. That's been this color right here, this exact bait. I don't have anything to cut it off with. I'll let you guys come up and look at it. But it is 8 all to pieces. The legs are usually not that short, and the legs usually aren't cocked sideways like that. This single frog's probably caught 150 fish for me. So, yeah, Spro 65, and this is the freak color. There's another question back there. Yes, sir.
When you set the hook, do you hesitate to allow him to swallow it? Because I've heard that fishing with a frog, you have to give him a little bit more time to eat. Is that true?
Yes, if you're in grass. I found that if I'm fishing in grass, you hear that, and they hit it, give them a second. Because what's happened is when they come up through that grass mat, not only are they grabbing your frog, but they're grabbing a mouthful of grass as well. So what they'll actually do is they'll grab that thing and they'll go under with it, and they'll start kind of shaking their head and start getting that grass away from them, and then they'll get the frog in their mouth and you can jack them. Open water, I don't hesitate. As soon as they eat it, I hit them. And there's a lot of videos on my channel of me fishing open water frogs, and like you'll see, I mean, a lot of times when they eat it and it's in open water, they ate it all the way to the back of their throat. And a lot of that has to do with I'm walking that frog in open water situations. And when I walk this frog, it's just like walking a dog with a spook, except for since the frog is a so much smaller profile, you can almost get it to turn 180. So a lot of the times I'll throw it in an area and I can almost make it sit still but still pop back and forth. So those bass, they hear that sound, they see that movement, and they can really, really key in on that. And so when they eat it, they've got it really, really good in the back of their throat. Yes, sir.
That double hook on that?
Yep, it's a double frog hook. It's a normal hollow body frog. I got one I can pass around here to you guys. Here's a couple. This one is another one. You guys can see it's been ate a little bit. This one's probably got 200 or 300 fish on it. But those are both Spro Bronze Eye 65s is what I'm using.
What color is that, Alex?
This one's called Freak.
Freak.
Freak, yep.
Alex?
Yes, sir.
How important is the color?
Well, I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people about that. I've found that when I'm fishing open water and it's clear, color can really make a big difference. The one I'm passing around, that one is called Barney, I think. And I've noticed with that particular color, I've never caught a fish under 6 pounds on that frog. Don't know why. I couldn't tell you. I don't know what it is. This Freak color, though, when the water's a little more dirty, it's got a little more color, they eat this. And I've caught a ton of fish on this. And then like this one right here, it's just the black belly with the white mixed into the legs. It does really, really well later on in the year. Late November is when this one does well. And I mean, it may be a plethora of things that feed into that. I think a lot of the times it's bass don't perceive color like we do, and when they're under the water, depending on where the sun is in the sky or how it's hitting the water or what's going on, they may see something completely different than what we're seeing. So I think a lot of times, like in grass, just throw a frog. They're going to come up, they're going to pop. In open water, play with colors, see what they want, because sometimes they'll want the Barney, sometimes they'll want the freak. It just all depends. So, yes, sir.
I've used frogs like on lily pads. I just moved down here from Ohio.
Yeah.
And so I always, set the hook on weedless. That kind of deal. I imagine you can do that with grass as well.
Yeah.
And then when you're in open, I've never used a frog in open water. That's really new.
Yeah.
So I don't imagine that's a big deal. Is there anything special about setting it up or anything?
Not really. I just trim the legs up. What I do is I actually match the frog legs to the nose. Actually, Spro has started cutting the frogs for you, pre-cutting the legs to where you want them, but just pretty much kind of fold the legs over, and I'll cut them right below the nose or right at the nose. So you guys can see that you lay the frog over and there's the nose. That's where I'll match the legs up to, and then the hooks, I don't even touch them. A lot of people want to can them out a little bit, but I found even in open water, if I skip it up under a tree limb or something, I want to get it in there and get it out without any problem getting hung up, so I just keep them just like they are.
Now, do you use flip and stick to get under a dock, or do you just use rig?
Nope, just my 7.3 heavy. So the 7.3 heavy it's a lot. I mean, it's pretty much a flip and stick. I mean, this thing is an absolute meat stick. I like the little bit shorter rod just because you are going to be working it, like walking the dogs. That little bit shorter rod keeps it out of the water. And even though I am a bigger guy, I'm 6'4", that shorter rod helps me just to walk that dog a little bit better with the frog and all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, you guys can see this the thing. It is a fast action. It is all meat in that one right there. I love this rod. So, any more questions? Do I see any more hands? Good. All right. So let's move on to the next thing. This kind of plays into the grass fishing as well, and this has been a consistent bait for me pretty much all the time. A lot of it probably has to do with the fact that I'm very confident in flipping. But grass fishing this time of year, flipping is a big thing. I've seen so many times when I've been on Chickamauga, you go down a grass line with a frog and you won't get a single bite. You hear a lot of popping, everything's right, you won't get a bite. You pick up the punching rig and you punch through that grass canopy, and that's when you'll get the bites. There's just some days that the fish don't want to come up and eat, because they're a living creature with a brain and they can make their own decisions, even though we don't like that. So there's just some days they don't want to eat the frog. So what I'm doing is, actually don't got one tied on, but what I'm doing is punching, and I'm punching it with a really big weight. This is an ounce Beast Coast tungsten bomb bar flipping weight. I'll even go up to 1.5 ounces, sometimes 2 ounces, just depending on how heavy that grass actually is. I've seen times on Chickamauga when the mats on top of the water can be 6, 7, 8, 10 inches thick. And when it's that thick, you gotta really have a heavy weight to get through that grass. If you tried to punch it with a 1/2 ounce, you'd have to launch that weight up there and get that momentum to punch through that mat. But when you have like a big, this is 1.75 ounce flipping weight, you can easily get it into that grass and get it back out. And then to match to that, I am pairing that with a 4 or 5/0 straight shank 4X strong flipping hook. The reason I'm doing that is the straight shank, you can bury the plastics a lot easier with that. It promotes flipping, especially when you snell this knot. That's a special kind of knot. I would show it to you guys, but I don't got a pair of scissors. But it's pretty much a knot, and what happens is when that weight hits that bait, it makes the bait, or the hook and the bait, both kick up. So you guys can see here, when I put pressure on this, it pops that bait up. And when it pops that bait up like that and it's in a fish's mouth, it's going to roll it right into the roof of their mouth. So when you hit them, you're getting a good hook in there. Because when you are punching those grass mats, you're going to be bringing up a lot of stuff when you start to bring that fish out of there. You're going to be bringing up not only, say you hook into a 6-pounder, you can bring up 5 pounds of grass with it. Then you've got a 10-pound just massive stuff that you're trying to wrench out of this cover. That's where rod and reel again comes into play. I'm fishing 7.5 foot, extra heavy, extra fast G-Rod Game Changer. I got that paired with a Lew's Custom Pro 7-1-1. I go with this reel because it's just a little bit smaller reel. A lot of times when you're flipping, you're not going to be flipping from more from me to the front of the row here, so you don't need a ton of line. And then again, 65-pound braid. And, you know, it's just so I have all that power when I do hit one of those fish in those grass mats and get them out of there. And with the punching, it's a lot like the bluegill or the frog fishing where you listen for the bluegills popping, and that's where you're going to want to look for it. As for the bait I'm using, Strike King structure bow. That's all I've flipped for about 3.5 years now. I've literally not used a structure bow flipping in 3 years. This is my absolute favorite bait. It's just great all around. I use it for flipping, I use it for Carolina rigging, I use it for big shaky heads. This is just, I don't know, Strike King did something right when they made this bait right here.
What's it called?
A Strike King structure bug or rage bug. It just depends. I think Tackle Warehouse calls them the structure bug, and I've seen them on Amazon called rage bugs, but it's just the one that's got 4 little arms. So, yes sir. Yes.
You tag your weight.
Yes sir.
Do you bring it up a little bit?
Sometimes it just depends. If I'm punching like really heavy cover, I'll usually keep it all kind of down on the hook. That way it's really compact. So when it does hit that mat, it'll go in easy. If I'm flipping a little bit lighter cover, like just flipping holes or something, I'll separate it just a little bit. And then sometimes if the water's really dirty, you can run a bead in between your bait and your weight, and then you do a little clip inside of it right there. So, any more questions on the flipping? So now we, you know, it's funny, I kind of look back too and look at the consistency of everything, and my consistency always comes from everything that I love. I love frogging, I love flipping. The next thing we're going to talk about is topwater fishing, and I really go with 2 different kinds of topwaters. I go with a plopping style topwater, and I go with a walking style topwater. Does that help too? You guys can pass around like that. So we'll start with the whopper plopper. So this is a bait that I used to absolutely hate until I figured it out. And when I figured it out and figured out where to fish it, what to look for, it became one of my favorite baits because it is super consistent. It is just, it draws big bites, and it's just something unique that now a lot of fish have seen, but it can still get a ton of bites. So with the whopper plopper, there's a few key things that I look for. Number 1 is wind. If there's just a little bit of chop, you know, like a 5 to 10 mile per hour wind, this thing's going to be super effective. If there's not much wind, for me, I've found that they just don't bite it as good. I think a lot of it has to do with how much noise that it actually makes. I've not yet to experiment with the silent version of this bait. They actually started making a silent one, and so it may be a little bit different, you know, when it comes to those scenarios. Another reason I think that it does a lot better in the wind is the size. So I'm actually only using the Whopper Plopper 130. They make a 90, 110, 130, and a 190. The 190 is like that big. It's a musky bait. So, but the 130 is all I've been using. And the reason I did that, I actually made a video about this a few weeks back too, is I picked up the Whopper Plopper, and it was one of those baits I thought, I don't know how to use this. I don't know where it's applicable. Let me go figure this out. So I dedicated myself almost 1.5 to 2 years to figuring out the exact rod, reel, line, the bait colors I wanted to use, everything that I wanted to use when I used this bait, because I knew it was effective and I knew it would get bites. And so I've stuck with the 130. Mostly I'm throwing it in bone. This is my favorite color. This is my most consistent color. This is the one I've caught the most fish on. And then just this past year, I started throwing in the monkey butt color as well. And River to Sea has done a really good job naming these baits. They got monkey butt, they got Yoda, they got all kinds of crazy stuff. But the monkey butt is another one. This is a smallmouth killer. Clearwater smallmouth, absolutely love this color. I think a lot of it has to do with it's a little translucent. It's got a little bit of that pink in there, and they just absolutely crush it. So I'll let you guys pass these around. Rod, reel, and line combination on this one is 7.5 foot G-Rod Pro Bass. This is a medium heavy. This is actually my worm rod, jig rod, when I'm fishing ledges and stuff like that. I found that I tried to go with a little bit shorter rod, and I just didn't have enough power for the 130. I went with a heavy rod, it was just too heavy. So the medium heavy 7.5 foot is kind of where I fell on that. Using a Lew's BB1 Pro, a lot like the frogging rod, it's got a deep spool. It can hold a lot of line because I'm throwing 20-pound copolymer with this bait. The reason I do that is just because I want to have the confidence when I do tie into something big with it that I got all the power that I need to get them away from whatever I'm fishing around. Because a lot of times with this bait, I'm fishing around rocks, I'm fishing around boat docks, I'm fishing around man-made structure, anything hard. So there's actually another YouTube channel called Tactical Bassing. The dudes are absolute geniuses. They can go out and throw baits all day long because they're guides. So they have very extensive knowledge of baits, and one of their favorite baits is this whopper plopper. And so I've noticed that it does really, really well around hard cover. And I never actualized in my mind why that was until they started to talk about it. And it's because it makes that plopping sound. When that thing gets going, you start to hear that that plopper. When it hits that hard cover, it echoes off that hard cover under the water. And that in combination with those rattles and that echo and the sound and everything that's going on, I don't know what Larry Delbert did, the inventor of this bait, but he did it right because it makes bass just react to this bait. And a lot of the times they're going to come right up to the back and they're going to hit that back hook, they're going to hit that plopper because they're trying to kill it, trying to shut it up. Jim, yes?
So what type of speed are you reeling this in?
So it's more of a sound thing for me than a speed thing. I listen for the sound that I want. And if you reel it too fast, you don't get a good plop. If you reel it too slow, the plop's too quiet. And it's really hard to explain. You almost kind of got to hear it. But there is a speed at which this thing finally starts to plop right. And it throws the most water, it plops the hardest, and that's the speed that I'm reeling it at. So I'm not like creeping it, and I'm not burning it. It's just kind of an in-between, keep my rod tip up, and it's just, if you've heard the sound, you'd recognize it. It's just like, it's a very distinct sound. It sounds just like what the whopper plopper should sound. Yep, plop, 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 and then boom. Yep. Yes, sir.
So the first two rods, you said you used 65-pound braid.
Yes, sir.
This one you said you used 20-pound full pounder.
Yes, sir.
Why that 65-pound braid?
Because the braid digs into itself.
I'm sorry?
It digs into itself.
Okay.
So I actually was using braid with this thing for a little while, and what would happen is I would throw that thing out there, and where the braid, I was actually using 30-pound braid, right? Toss it out there, it burned the mess. It's because that smaller diameter braid digs into itself. If I get it hung, or I jerk it too hard, or do something, it digs into itself. The
That doesn't happen with your other?
The 65-pound, the diameter's bigger, so it doesn't dig into itself as much.
Well, why not use 65-pound on that?
Because another thing I was about to say is it has a little more give to it. So the copolymer has a lot more stretch in it, where the 65-pound braid has no stretch.
Okay.
So what will happen is you'll hook into a fish, and when you lay back into it, even though you sweep it with that rod, that medium heavy rod is going to rip those treble hooks instead of drive those treble hooks. So when I'm fishing that copolymer, it's got just a little more stretch in it. So when I hit that fish, it really buries those treble hooks into it instead of ripping holes in it. So, yes, sir.
Do you find that the whopper ploppers ride very high in the water? I've got one, and it seems like it's barely in the water. That tail,
Yeah.
it's way up.
Yeah, well, if you watch it, actually, when you throw it, it'll sit about like that in the water. And then once you get it up and get it going and it kills itself out, it's going to ride high in the water just so you can get that sound out of it.
Right.
A lot of the newer ones, they've actually redesigned the tail just a little bit. It has like a little bit of a cut down, and it actually helps it to like kind of dig a little bit more and get more of that plopping sound. One more thing on this, I throw a snap swivel on the front. The snap swivel, what it does, it allows that bait to have free range of motion. So you're going to get something hung up on that black plopper, and when you do, it's going to start to barrel roll. And if you're on a long cast and you reel that all the way in, you're going to ruin the whole spool line. Whether you're throwing braid, mono, fluorocarbon, it doesn't matter. It's going to ruin it. So throw the snap swivel on front so that if you do get something hung up on it, you're not going to ruin the
I
whole
was
spool
going to
line.
ask again, you said you tie the frog on that, but it snaps on the frog.
Because that snap swivel will open up. The snap will open up. If I'm 65-pound braid, 7.3 heavy rod, and a grass mat with a snap on the front, I just don't even want to play with it. Just tie it straight to the frog. That way, I know nothing's going to come apart.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Any more questions about the plopper?
Have you tried that one with the three ploppers?
Oh, the Bass Pro version?
I've seen it up at the Keys Outdoors. He's got it. There's three of them.
Oh, it's like the buzzbait plopper.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've not tried that one yet.
Yeah.
I'm not even messed with
I'm a
that.
little leery of that.
I'm not too sure
I
about that.
think it's taking a good idea a little far.
That's right. So the next thing is just a walking bait, topwater walking bait. For me, I'm fishing. Oh, thank you very much. I'm fishing a sexy dog and just a normal old Zara spook. I'm fishing the normal size and then the super spook size as well. And I found, fall time, you're gonna have all those bait fish moving into the back of the pockets. They start to migrate back there. As the days start to get shorter, the water starts to cool down, it just hits those natural instincts in those fish and in those bait fish to go to the back of the pockets. And when they do, the bass are gonna follow. Tellico, Loudon, a lot of your clear, deep lakes are the places that you'll easily be able to go to the back of the pocket, find schooling fish, and catch them on a spook. Right now, where the water's not cooled down very much, they're still kind of out in the fronts of the pockets. They're schooling on main lake points. They're schooling out kind of in open water. But as it starts to cool down, they'll start to move back. And all a spook looks like is a big dime bait fish. And for a bass, when it sees something struggling on the top of the water, it's going to take advantage of it, even when it's surrounded by a bunch of real bait fish. This is just classic fishing right here. Walking the dog with the top water. For me, I'm fishing this. I'm fishing this on a 6'9" medium heavy, or 6'9" medium, excuse me. 7-1 gear ratio reel. This is just a loose LFS. And then I'm fishing, it really depends, 15 to 17 pound copolymer. That way, again, I have a little more stretch. Even though this is a 6'9" medium, I found a lot of times, and I know a lot of guys, when one blows up on it, what's your first instinct? You jerk. You know what I mean? So when I've got a more moderate action rod that's got a lot more forgiveness, even if I do accidentally kind of give that initial jerk, it still gives me a lot of forgiveness so that that fish can get it. And then once they get it, I'm treating it kind of just like a crankbait. I want to drive the treble hooks in. I want to get them good and buried in their face. That way I know I'm going to get them into the boat. Depending on the bait, I'm either going to run a snap in the front. I'm either going to run a snap and a split ring, just a snap, or just tie directly to the bait. It all depends on the bait. I've got a box full of top waters, and every single one of them reacts differently and likes to be walked at a certain speed or fished with a certain thing in front of it to make it walk better. I found with these sexy dogs that if I go split ring to the snap, that gives it what it wants to make it walk the best. It also gives me a little more free range of motion. So when that small mouth or that large mouth comes up and he's got that thing in his mouth and it's going all around, that snap is giving me a lot more free range of motion. I'm getting a lot more, it can sling to the side, it can roll over on itself, and then those fish aren't going to get leverage on you and be able to throw that bait. It's easy. Just because there is a lot of treble hooks on that, you could hook them with just the back, and when they come up, trying to shake it, that extra range of motion will keep them from throwing that bait. Colors on these, I throw mainly shad profiles, or shad colors. This one is an Oyster by Strike King. I'm passing around a chrome. If the water's really clear, I'll throw something like a clear bone, just shad colors. Because primarily when you're throwing the spook at school and fish in the fall, you're imitating gizzard shad, threadfin shad, alewives, whatever it could be, depending on what lake that you're on around here. So super simple with that one. That was just straightforward. It's just a great way to put a lot of big fish into the boat really, really fast. And those first few days that you got to get all your gear on and put a hoodie on and your rain pants and a toboggan and all that stuff, that's the day you need to be out there throwing stuff. It's going to pop off. So the last one is my favorite. This is something that intimidates a lot of people. And crappie bait. Yeah, bluegills. That's what I use for bluegills. But usually when I whip these things out, a lot of people are like, oh my God, that's a keeper bass. Yeah, it is. So big swim baits, glide baits in particular this time of year. I kind of shy away from the paddle tail big swim baits like your mag drafts and stuff. These are more springtime baits for me. Something about the action, the head shimmy in these just get bass going in the spring. Now in the fall time, my glide baits are what I go to, and I love throwing big 6, 7, 8, 10-inch glide baits. And these things are a type of bait that you're going to see a lot of big fish because they just draw big fish away from cover. And these are very cover-oriented baits. You're going to throw at the most obvious thing in the lake. Like a guy could go down a bank, flip a jig on a tree 10 times, and you go and throw this, and that 4-pounder that was sitting on that tree that wouldn't eat his jig will come out and try to look at this. Because there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, when a fish sees a bait like this, a lot of the times when they see it, number one, they've never seen anything quite like that. They've never seen a big, lumbering, side-to-side action bait. Number two, usually when it's this big, it's not fake. So they're not intimidated by it. They don't think when they see this thing, they think, you know, that's fake, I need to stay away from it, you know, it's going to hurt me. Those instincts don't kick in because usually when something is this big in the water with them, it is a very real thing. Number three is it looks like the stuff that big fish like to eat. With this bait, you're not going to get a ton of bites. It's just the nature of throwing big live baits. The 11 pounder that my buddy caught had a creeper-sized crappie in the back of his throat. So that's what that fish was eating. It wasn't eating threadfin, it wasn't eating alewives. It was eating big things because it was a big fish, and that's why she was that big. Yes, sir.
What did you say the name of the lure was?
This is a River to Sea S Waver. This is the 200 size. So this one's, I think it's 7 inches and 4 ounces.
River to sea?
Yeah, Rivers. It's River, then the number 2 Sea. It's the same people who make the
Wow.
Plopper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're working that like in slow motion, walking the dog.
Pretty much, it's an underwater walk dog.
Yeah.
And you just get those real big side-to-side glides with that thing. And it just the size, the volume of water that this thing's displacing, it's what a big bass relates to being something that it wants to eat. Because big bass don't get big by eating small stuff. They eat the biggest, most protein-rich thing that they can get their mouth on. Yes, sir.
Is that a floating bait or
It's a slow sinking bait. So
it'll stay on the top?
no, it'll sink about a foot every 5 seconds. So it's just real, I mean, it kind of just hangs, you know what I mean? Just real slow. I got another one I'm going to talk about here in a minute. It's a floating bait, but when you work it a little bit different. It actually dives. But I'll pass this one around and you guys can kind of get a look at it.
What color is that, Alex?
The light trout is out there. We'll have to talk about that.
Light trout?
Light trout.
Pretty
Yeah.
real.
Yes, sir.
Question on that bait that you showed, I never used anything like that except for maybe muscle.
Yes, sir.
So when you're walking the dog with that thing, when you get it to flip, does it want to rise back up a little bit, or does it?
That one in particular does not. It'll stay kind of just right under the water, and if you let it go and die, it will just slowly
Okay,
sink.
so if you're moving it, it's going to hold that depth, whether it's a foot or
Yes, sir. Yeah, and with that bait, it has a head shimmy. And it's hard to explain unless you see it. And with bigger baits, it's something that I've noticed, has been my experience with it, is anything that has that head shimmy gets bites. And I think it's something in nature. I think it's something in a gizzard shad or maybe a bluegill. If you watch them swim, they all kind of, if you watch them, their heads are just kind of always dark. You know what I mean? And so when you roll that bait out, it'll roll way out and it'll kind of shimmy at the end. Kick it back and it'll shimmy right at the end. And usually when you do those kicks, and you start to draw that bass off that cover, you give it a few quick kicks and that's when they're going to eat it. It's because that bass sees that big bait lumbering through the water, it starts to come up on it, and when you kick it real fast like that, that fish goes, it knows I'm here, it's trying to get away from me. Instincts eat it and kill it.
Do you snaps on that, or?
Yeah, I actually use a decoy egg snap on that. These are imported from Japan. I believe you can buy them on Tackle Warehouse, but that snap right there is rated for 120 pounds. So it's a very, very heavy duty snap. This is not going to open up with you. Another deal with this one, it is an egg snap. So the egg snap just promotes it not opening up. It's more than like the traditional snap, you can get some kind of flex in there. And when you got a big one up next to the boat, if it falls out all the way to the boat, it eats it. And you try to, go with them, and you've got a big heavy rod, big heavy line, your whole body weight's going with them, stuff just starts to open up. So I found that the decoy egg snaps, I actually brought the pack with me so I can tell you guys. The number 4s are the best ones for big swim baits. Now, rod reel, line, and this is actually a prototype rod from G-Rod. This one is not available to the public. It was actually an accident is what it was. When we were getting this rod made, the factory misunderstood what Glenn, the owner, wanted. They thought he wanted a 7-11 heavy cranking rod. So they sent him a heavy 7-11 moderate action Mac punching rod is what they sent him. So it's actually a moderate action or moderate fast to moderate extra heavy rod. So what that moderate action does is, just like I said with all the rest of the treble hook baits, essentially you look at a bait like this, it's just got 2 giant treble hooks on it. So it's kind of like a giant crankbait. You want to drive those hooks in. You don't want to rip those hooks out. If the rod is too heavy, you'll rip the hooks right out of their mouth. You'll never get that fish in the boat if they do commit to your bait. So I go with more of that modern, bend about to the second guide up is where you want it to bend. Ton of companies out there making swim bait rods now. They're a lot of them are a big investment, initial investment up front, because it's such a specialized thing. You're going to buy a rod to throw a swim bait for the most part. The S-wavers, the I-slides, those kinds of things, you can throw them on a cranking stick, or not a cranking stick, I mean a flipping stick. And a lot of the times before I got this rod, that's what I was doing. But what I was finding was I was popping off guides, I would snap rods, the reel seats would come undone, and it's because those rods just aren't made for baits that size. And when you're throwing something like it, it's just putting a lot of pressure on everything that you're using. So that's why, again, 7-11 heavy rod, moderate action. I go with the Lew's Super Duty 200 wide is what this one is. It's a wider spool. It holds a ton of line because I'm fishing 25-pound copolymer with this. Again, it has the stretch, like I said. It's got that little bit extra stretch, that more moderate action. So when I do have a fish eat, it gives it just a little bit of stretch, a little bit of give, so I can really drive those treble hooks home. Yes, sir.
I'll send the brand of co-power.
P-line.
What is it?
P-line.
P-line?
Yeah, I use P-line on almost everything. It's my go-to line. I've used it for a lot of years, and it's never done me wrong. Another bait to consider is the Megabytes I-Slide. This is another one of my favorite baits. This is a little bit smaller glide bait. It usually has a tail on it. I take the tails off because they get bent up and they're kind of expensive. But you can imagine the tail there. This one is a lot different. This is something I like to throw as it gets a little bit colder, a little bit later in the year. I like to also throw it early in the year because this is fishing like fishing giant jerk bait, essentially. You're going to really use that rod. You're going to pop that slack in your line. This thing is going to dart real hard back and forth. You can, mix up your retrieve just like a jerk bait, mix up your retrieve just like a topwater, and it just looks like a big bait fish trying to flee. It looks like a crappie trying to flee, and gets a lot of bites. Also, if you guys are into muskie fishing, I've caught 4 or 5 muskie on this one right here, and another 2 or 3 on this one right here. They absolutely love the I-Slide for some reason. It may be because of just that erratic action, but I-Slide is a really cool bait. I think you were asking about it rising up. This one actually floats, and so it's a very, very slow float, but it floats. So if you just kill it, it's going to really slowly rise back up to the top. When you're jerking and treating it like a jerk bait, it's kind of jerking down all the way as it goes, and so it just gets a little bit deeper. You're not going to get it like 10 or 15 feet, 4 or 5 feet, just like a jerk bait. Is what it's doing. So you guys can pass it around if you want to. Here's that one. And for those baits, a lot of them, I'm switching out treble hooks, I'm switching out split rings, doing everything, just bulking everything up. I've had some nightmares happen. Lost probably my biggest fish of my life because split ring opened up on a swim bait that I didn't change the split ring out on. So I'm switching up to owner split rings, either mustad or owner treble hooks. You want 2X, 3X strong treble hooks depending on what bait you're throwing. The I-Slides, I'm throwing 2X strong treble hooks on that one. It's just a little bit lighter wire. It's a little less weight, so it helps it to kind of suspend more than rise back up to the top. The S-Waver, 3X strong on those. And I want to say, I'm not sure on the split ring size, but I just played with it. I literally got a fish tank, filled it up full of water, and I put a split ring on it, put it in there, it sank too fast. Okay, I don't like that. Take that off, put it in there, it starts sinking a little bit slower. Just change them out, play with them until you get it where it's just kind of a real slow sink. It really wants to kind of, like I said, hang in their face. And when you can get that kind of, that big wide glide, you can get that thing kind of hang in their face, drives them crazy. Any predator in the lake is going to try to kill it. Yes, sir.
Your knots, when you're tying directly a 65-pound braid direct to the lure, what knot do you use? And when you use a snap or a split ring with a fluorocarbon or monofilament, what knot do you use?
I'm using the same knot for everything that I tie. So I don't know the exact name of it. So I saw Shaw Grigsby tie it one time. I've been using it ever since. I've been told it's called the Double San Diego Jam. The G-Man calls it around the barn, over the shoulder, Shindo double something knot. You know, everybody's got different names for it. I think Shaw Grigsby.
He's not going to tell you, Chuck.
Yeah. Exactly. I wish I had the answer, but I do have a video on my channel. You can go watch exactly how to tie it. But it's essentially it's a double line, so there's a double connection when you tie it on. So you're going to have two pieces of line that actually sit either on the eye of the bait or the split ring or whatever, or the snap or whatever you're using. You're going to have two pieces of line on it, and you wrap it up 3 times back through itself. It's hard to explain. I guess that's why everybody says it's their knot, because it's so good. But I've been using that knot. It works great for fluorocarbon. Works great for braid. It's not going to slip. I've not had that knot break in a long time. But I broke off baits and got it back, and there'll be a weak spot in the line, and the knot is still very intact. I mean, it's a very, very good knot, but I think it's called Double San Diego Jam. I'm not sure. It's just a knot I learned.
It is.
Double San Diego Jam. Yep. So that's straight out of California right there for you. That's where that came from. So if it ain't the Japanese, it's out of California. It kind of goes from Japan to California, and then the rest of us find out about it. So, but yeah, I love swimbait fishing. I do have to say that it's one of those deals that it can be very intimidating when someone shows you a bait this big and you pick up something that you can throw it for the first time. And it took me a very long time to gain the confidence in it that I have now. And it was one of those things, a lot like the Whopper Plopper or anything else that you learn how to fish. It just kind of all comes together one day. You start to figure out, well, the weather's doing this, and that fish was doing that, and I made this cast, and I worked it this way, and all the pieces kind of come together. And usually when you're throwing the big swim bait, when all the pieces come together, it's going to be a really, really big fish. Now, that's not to say I don't catch the little ones on it. I cannot tell you how many 2 and 3 pounders and even less than a pound fish have hit the River CS waiver. Just the other day, I went to Watts Bar. I caught a striper with it, just because I thought that would be fun. It wasn't 30 pounds. He drug me all over the place. But then I went down a bait and I caught like 2 2-pounders, one that was under a pound, and like a 3. It's all caught on. But those fish, I was drawing them out in wolf packs of 25 off cover. I tossed that thing up there, big pieces of obvious cover that I knew were there. There would be 25 bass rise up and come after that thing. It's just the drawing power of that thing. Chickamauga, I've been going down a grass line, same thing. You throw it up next to the grass line, I've had a wolf pack of over 5 to 6 pounders come out and follow that thing. And it's just getting that commitment out of this fish, figuring out how to work those baits. And like I said, if you get those followers, if you're throwing these bigger baits, you start to see those followers, give it that quick dart, make those fish think that that thing's trying to get away from them, and they're going to commit to it. I'll pass this one around. This is the Debs 250. This is a 7-ounce, 10.5-inch bait. This right here is like the mother of all swim baits. This is, first day I threw it, I drew out 2 muskie, 4 striper, and about a 6 or 7 pounder. So, really amazing bait. Those?
Yeah, how much are
You don't want to know how much that is.
You mentioned grass and Chickamauga.
Yes, sir.
These 3 lakes right up here.
Hey, listen up, guys.
Watts Bar has a ton of grass in it. I've found a lot of grass in Watts Bar. It's really making me happy to know that they're letting the grass grow there. Anytime you guys get a chance to sign a petition and not spray the grass in Watts Bar, get on it for me, because I'm fighting all the time. Call TWRA, tell them, hey, I got a complaint. I want to say don't spray the grass in Watts Bar, because the more people we get to do that, the less it
You see
gets
any in Fort Loudon?
I saw a lot on Loudon near the dam this year. There was a lot of pockets up through there on the left, going back towards like Concord. A lot of those pockets up through there had grass in them. So, which is good. I don't know if they sprayed it this year or what happened. I've not been down there in a while. And then there's a ton of grass up here north towards downtown Knoxville. Like up in the river, all that area, there's a ton of grass growing up there, which again, it's making me happy. Because when the grass is there, it brings in the oxygen, and then they start to put in those Florida strain and those G bass. That's when we have world-class fisheries like Chickamauga. So, really excited about that. Any more questions?
How do you, can I ask you what you do with your line?
Doing my line.
Yeah, what's your philosophy with the lines? You know, how do you care for your lines?
All right,
How do
careful.
you, yeah, for through the season so that the line doesn't go bad on the spool?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm changing my line out quite a bit because I retie a lot.
Okay.
That's one of my major things is just I retie pretty consistently. About once an hour, I'll sit down and retie even if I don't think I need to, just so that if I do tie into a really big fish, I know something's not going to come apart. So a lot of the times, I'm re-spooling probably once a month, maybe once every month and a half. Yeah, braid, I don't really mess with it. I mean, braid's hard to break. It's hard to, it'll fade, it'll do this thing. But for the most part, it's going to stay the way it should. I've never used a line conditioner. I got buddies that swear by them. I've got buddies that tell me don't even touch them. They strip your line of what it needs. But if I'm not using, you know, like don't just let the rods bake in the sun or anything like that. Try to keep them inside if you're not using those kind of things.
Why do you use so much coat bottom?
I love it. It's never broke. It's like whale rope. I've used it since, it was what my dad put on my very first bait caster. It's never failed me. I've never really had an
Which is a
issue.
mixture of.
It's mono and fluorocarbon.
Right.
So it's it can either be a mono coated in fluoro or a fluoro coated in mono, which is copolymer. That's where they get that name from. P-line is the one I use. It's the one I have the most confidence in. And I mean, this stuff's like whale rope. I honestly think you could punch a mat with 25-pound P-line and get away with it. I mean, this stuff is, I have to use the boat to break 12 pounds sometimes. So I really like the stuff. It doesn't have the invisibility of like a really high-end fluorocarbon. And a lot of your high-end fluorocarbons are just as good. You know, I got buddies that live up north, like Michigan. I go to Michigan once a year. And when you're fishing clear waters like that, fluorocarbon really does make a difference. And so, you know, he's willing to spend $30 for 150 yards of line. I spend $30 and I get 600 yards of line. And it's just as good for what I'm doing.
Do you use fluorocarbon here?
You never run leaders at all?
I run a leader on a spinner rod. I do 15-pound braid to a leader, and I use 6 to 8 pound copolymer. Yep, I just don't use fluorocarbon. That's fine. It's kind of for where we live, what we do. It's kind of excessive for the price that you're going to pay.
Yeah.
When the P-line will do just as good. Now I know there's probably people who are going to watch this video and start clacking on that keyboard and tell me how wrong I am, but I've caught fish. That's all that matters, right? So, any more questions? Yes, sir.
What's the, I know this got magnets that hold the hook.
Yeah. It just hugs those hooks up next to the body of that bait, gives it a more streamlined profile so that when you're working it works a little bit better. And then two, a lot of times when you're throwing big baits like that, fish are going to dissect them a lot. And according to the guy who made it, it helps to hug the hooks up against there so it looks more natural. I don't know how true that is, but that's kind of what he said. But I found when the hooks are hanging, it'll actually work a little bit different. And when they're up next to the body, it'll work just a little bit better. So it's kind of a design thing. That's a Mega Bass is very, all their baits are unique in how they're made. And like that bait actually reacts in different water temperatures differently. So if it's a little bit, if it's above 50, it wants to float more. If it's below 50, it wants to sink more. It's pretty crazy. So, any more questions? Yes, sir.
You work all those big swim baits are pretty high in the water column?
Yes, sir. If I can't see it, then I reel it in. I want to watch that bait because a lot of the times with those bigger baits, like I said, it's very cover oriented. You're throwing to those bigger than, those average, not average, but like obvious pieces of cover. And so you're going to want to draw those fish out, and it will draw those fish right up to the top. They'll be right on that swim bait's tail. And a lot of the telltale signs with big swim baits for any of you guys, if you decide to start kind of tossing them around, experimenting with them, you'll have a bait coming through the water, and you have like 2 or 3 reactions out of a bass. You'll have the lazy reaction where they just kind of follow it. They're just kind of like, it's there. I want to kind of see what it is, see if I can eat it. Then you'll have the zigzag. He's right on his tail. He's like right with it. Those are the ones that are going to eat. Then you'll have the ones that just drill it. No reckless abandon. They come off the cover, they hit it so hard, you're like, oh my God, get the net. Everybody's freaking out. Cheers, applause, that kind of stuff. And then the third are the rushers, and then they turn off. They'll bum rush it, and as soon as they get up to it, it's like their instincts hit them, and they just turn right off, and they won't come back. So, but if you get the ones that are tailing it and they're right on its tail, those are the ones that are definitely, you can make those fish eat. So, we good? Any more questions? We good? All right, I'll be hanging out.